And today we're going to be doing Unit 8 Learning Target 4 notes. We're talking about simplifying radicals with variables. So we're going to take variables or letters and we're going to use that same kind of pair idea that we've been working with when we're talking about numbers. So remember that x squared is really the same as x times x. So really the best way for us to find out those pairs is to write out the number of x's or y's or whatever our letter is and then find our pairs. So go ahead, pause the video, make sure you've got all of that written down. All right, so let's take a look at some of the following examples. So we have the square root of x to the fifth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out my square root and I'm going to write out 5 x's because that's what x to the fifth means. It means we have x times x times x times x times x. So then we have a pair of x's here and a pair of x's here. So I'm going to write each of those. So I have one x representing this pair, so now that pair is taken care of. And then I have another x representing this pair, now that one's taken care of. And left underneath the radical is just x. So then x times x is x squared. So then we're going to write that as x squared times the square root of x. And that's your final answer for number 1. So really it's not too bad. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 2 because number 2 is going to be just a little bit different. So we have 6 x's, so I'm going to draw out 6 x's. So I have x, 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 x. So I have a pair of x's here, a pair of x's here, and a pair of x's here. So what happened here is all of our x's ended up in pairs. And just like before, when all of your x's end up in pairs, then your radical goes away. So there's an x for the first pair, there's an x for a second pair, and there's an x for the third pair. So x times x times x is going to give us x to the third. So your answer for number 2 is simply just x to the third. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 3. Number 3 is going to be really similar. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 x's. So there's 8 x's and we're going to count out the pairs. So I look in here and everything ended up in pairs. And I ended up having 4 pairs at the end of it. So that means I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 x's on the outside. So then my answer is x to the 4th. Okay. Now let's take a look at x to the 13th. So we're going to have 13 x's underneath there. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If that's even drawing anymore. Nope. I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's a lot of x's. So I'm going to find my pairs. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pairs, and then I have one lonely x left without. So you should only have the letter to the first power left underneath the radical, because if there's more than that, then that means there's a pair somewhere. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pairs that we took on the outside. So I wrote 6 x's on the outside. So now we're going to take and multiply all of those together, and that's going to give us x to the 6th times the square root of x. So your final answer is x to the 6th times the square root of x. Oops, I don't want to do that. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at these next problems. So I'm going to go ahead and take this. So now this one, we have 2 letters. Now a letter can only be a pair with itself. So we're going to have 4 x's and then we're going to have 7 y's. So we have 4 x's and 7 y's. So we have a pair of x's here, a pair of x's here. Pair of y's, pair of y's, pair of y's. So then on the outside I have 1, 2 pairs of x's and 1, 2, 3 pairs of y's. And left underneath the radical is just that y without a pair. So I have x squared for my 2 x's, y cubed for my 3 y's, and then left underneath the radical is the square root of y. So I have x squared y cubed times the square root of y. Next, let's take a look at number 6. So for number 6, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 r's, and then 7 s's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 1, 2 pairs of r's, 1, 2, 3 pairs of s's. 1, 2 pairs of r's, 1, 2, 3 pairs of s's. And left underneath the radical, I have an r and an s. So I'm just going to have r times s left underneath the radical. So r times r is r squared. S times s times s is s cubed. So then we get left underneath is the square root of r times s. All right, let's take a look at these next ones. So taking a look at number 7. So for number 7, we have to split up that 24. So we have to divide out that 24 as well as deal with our letters. So 24 I can break down to 4 and 6. 4 I can break down to 2 and 3. 2 and 2. 6 I can break down to 2 and 3, getting ahead of myself. So now I'm going to do exactly like I did with the letters before, except I'm going to put the numbers first. So I have 2 times 2 times 3, and then I'm going to have x times x times x. So now I'm still going to go pair hunting. I have a pair of 2's there and a pair of x's there. So on the outside, I'm going to have 2 times x. And left underneath, I have 2 times 3 times x. So I want to go through the work of multiplying this out. Well, 2 times x is just 2x. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times x is 6x. So this right here is your final answer for number 7. Likewise, we need to do the same thing with 50. So 50 I can break down to 25 and 2. I can break down 25 to 5 and 5. So let's go ahead and let's write everything out. So I have 2 times 5 times 5. And then I have 5 r's, so I'm going to go ahead and write out all 5 of my r's. Now I need to find some pairs. I have a pair of 5's, a pair of r's, and another pair of r's. So on the outside, I can take out a 5, I can take out an r, and I can take out another r. So left underneath the radical is 2 and r. So when I have 5, that 5 is going to stay the same, and r times r is r squared. So I have 5r squared times the square root of 2r. So that's your final answer for number 8, or number 7, or number 8. Goodness gracious me, I have no idea what's going on right now. All right, so let's take a look at 18. So we want to break down 18, and I'm going to change my pen color just for fun. So 18 I can break down into 9 and 2, and 9 I can break down into 3 and 3. So then left underneath the radical, I have 2 times 3 times 3, and then I'm going to have 6 different a's. I have a pair of 3's here, pair of 2's here, or pair of a's, pair of a's, pair of a's. So I have 1 pair of 3, and then I have 3 pairs of a's, so I'm going to write 3 a's on the outside. And then left underneath the radical is 2. All of our a's are gone. Well, when I have 3 a's, I need to write that as a cubed. So I have 3a cubed times the square root of 2. So that's your final answer for number 9. Let's take a look at number 10. How do you split up 75? Well, 75 divides out into 25 and 3. 25 you can break down to 5 and 5. So then underneath the radical you have 3 times 5 times 5, and then you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 q's. So we have 1 pair of 5's and then 2 pairs of q's. So I'm going to write my 1 pair of 5's on the outside, then I have a pair of q's, and then left underneath the radical is just that 3. Well, q times q is going to be 5q squared, and then square root of 3. So that right there is your final answer. All right, let's take a look at number 11 and number 12. So for number 11, we need to figure out what divides 81. Well, that's going to be 9 and 9. Now, each of those 9's can be broken down into 3 and 3. So then, underneath the radical, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 3's, and then 1, 2, 3 w's. So now we need to find our pairs. We have a pair of 3's, a pair of 3's, and then just 1 pair of w's. So that means we're going to have 3 times 3 on the outside, then we're going to bring out a w. Left underneath the radical still is just a w. So now we need to multiply on the outside. 3 times 3 is 9, and then w, and then left underneath the radical is just w. So we have 9w times the square root of w. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at 36. We can divide that up into 6 and 6. And then we get 2 and 3, and 2 and 3. So let's go ahead and let's put everything underneath our radical. So I'm going to put it in numerical order. So I have 2 times 2, and then 3 times 3, and then I'm going to have 9 D's. If I can fit them all, we'll see. D, close enough. Okay, so I have a pair of 2's, a pair of 3's, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of D's. So I'm going to write out my pairs. I have a 2, I have a 3, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of D's. Remember, when you take them out of the radical, they're not a pair anymore. But left underneath the radical, I still have 1 D. So that does not mean one direction, just so everybody's clear. All right, so 2 times 3 is 6, and then we have D to the 4th, and left underneath the radical is just D. So I have 6D to the 4th for number 12. All right, last couple here. Let's take a look at 13 and 14. Whoops. So for 13, I'm going to break down 10. I can break down, or 100. I can break down 100 into 10 and 10, and 5 and 2, and 5 and 2. So then underneath my radical, I'm going to have 2 times 2 times 5 times 5, and then I'm going to have 4 U's. So I have a pair here, a pair here, a pair here, a pair here. Well, guess what? Everything ended up in a pair. Remember, when everything ends up in a pair, then you don't have the radical anymore. So we're going to have 2 times 5 times U times U. Well, 2 times 5 is 10. U times U is U squared. So the answer to this is simply 10U squared. Now, let's take a look at number 14. So for number 14, we need to break down 64. Well, I'm going to break down 64 into 8 and 8. Come on. And then 8 I can break down to 4 and 2, and 4 and 2. 4 I can break down to 2 and 2. And now I want to put everything underneath my radical. So then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to have 8 x's, which I'm just going to write below because I did not plan out my space very well. So technically all of that is under the same radical. I just kind of was silly and ran out of space. So we have a pair of 2's, a pair of 2's, a pair of 2's, a pair of x's, a pair of x's, a pair of x's, a pair of x's. So again, everything ended up in an x. So I have a pair, sorry. So I have 1, 2, 3 pairs of 2's, 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of x's. So now we just need to simplify that. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. X times x times x times x. Well, there's 4 x's, so that's x to the 4th. So your final answer is 8x to the 4th. All right, so now we need to go ahead and we need to break down 126. Now, I don't necessarily know things that easily go into 126, so I divided it by 2, and I got 2 and 63. Well, 63 you can break down to 9 and 7, and 9 you can break down to 3 and 3. So let's go ahead and let's write everything out. So I have 2 times 3 times 3 times 7, and then I'm going to have 4 x's and 3 y's. So then I want to go ahead and calculate out my pairs. So I have 3, and then I have a pair of x's, another pair of x's, and 1 pair of y's. So I have my pair of 3's, my pair of x's, my pair of x's, and my 1 pair of y's. Left underneath the radical, I have 2 times 7 times y. Now I just need to simplify that out. X times x is x squared, so I have 3x squared y. Then underneath the square root, 2 times 7 is 14, and then you get y. So I have 3x squared y times the square root of 14y. Let's go ahead and let's simplify down 48. So 48 simplifies down to 6 and 8, and then 2 and 3, 8 to 4 and 2, and then to 2 and 2. So let's go ahead and let's put everything underneath our radical. So we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And then I'm going to have 3 p's. And again, I didn't leave enough space, so my q's are going to continue on the bottom. So I'm going to have 8 q's. And q's are really not fun letter to write this many times. Okay, so now let's find our pairs. So we have 2 pairs of 2's, 2 pairs of 2's, 1 pair of p's, 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of q's. So then let's go ahead and write out what we have. So on the outside, we're going to have 2 times 2. Then we're going to have a p. And then we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of q's. Still left underneath the radical is 3 and p. So 3p goes underneath the radical. So now we just need to multiply that out. 2 times 2 is 4. And then p. Q to the when there's 4 q's, it's going to be q to the 4th times the square root of 3p. Excuse me. So that concludes your note video today. Go ahead and show me your completed note sheet when you are done. Thanks for listening.